All right, what's going on, Giants fans? Wanted to make a quick video talking about Joe Judge's appearance on The Fan, New York's radio station. He was on with Boomer and Gio. And a lot of times these interviews, you don't really hear much. You know, it's a lot of coach talk. But I actually thought Joe Judge gave us some nice little nuggets in there that I want to talk about. And maybe it's the end of the season, being candid. Before we get into it, make sure to like and subscribe. I've been forgetting to ask for that, so make sure you subscribe. And like. If you like it, like it. If you subscribe it, subscribe it. But the biggest thing I took away, really, is that him and Patrick Graham are like this. Those guys are attached at the hip. And we know that Patrick Graham last week signed an extension and wasn't taking head coaching interviews. Like, wasn't even taking interviews, which kind of, to me, was like, why don't you just take interviews? Like, there's no harm in taking interviews. That could be your way next year of getting a job that you really like. But he wasn't even going to take interviews. And Joe Judge said that those guys are the only two coaches in the building right now. The only two coaches that are there right now are Joe Judge and Patrick Graham. And I think that says a lot. Because Patrick Graham was named the assistant head coach when he came over from Miami last year. And I think we looked at that as like, oh, maybe that's their way of, getting him to, take a job where he's upgrading the position, from Miami where he was only the defensive coordinator, even though Flores was calling plays towards the end. So I thought, okay, maybe that's what they're doing. I really do think that assistant head coach role really means what it says. Now, I'm not saying that they're equals, but I really do think Joe Judge values Patrick Graham like so much. And that's not even a shot at Jason Garrett or any other coach. But I really do think he views him as an assistant head coach and not solely a title. Like, no, dude, this is me and you. This is me and you. So I love the way those two work together. I mean, I fell in love with Patrick Graham before I did, Joe Judge, because I just... you could see it in the Rams game. Like, wow, this guy's got a little hint of genius to him. And then we saw it, throughout the years, they became the 9th-ranked defense. And then Joe Judge, just the way he handles the team. I mean, it's hard to not like him. There's been decisions here and there, but overall, I've been really pleased with Joe Judge. So that was cool to hear. They're like, hey, those are the only two guys in the room, and they made it a point to bring him back. They said that was, our top priority this offseason was bringing back Patrick Graham. So that's cool. Obviously you want to see him succeed and maybe do a head coach gig eventually, but I'm glad he's back for 2021 with the New York Giants. What else was there? Oh, he was talking about in the GM, like in the GM head coach, like, looking for the head coaching process when I was asked about, Doug Peterson being fired. He basically he confirmed, he's like, hey, you kind of want to have guys You want to have guys So if there is any coaching changes going forward, whether it's OC or even getting a new outside linebacker coach to replace Bielema or somebody else goes and gets a call, say Burton Burns follows Steve Sarkisian to Texas or something. Just look for guys that Joe Judge or Patrick Graham has a relationship with in that. So that was interesting. When asked about Arizona and Daniel Jones playing in that game, he put the blame on them. He didn't say that that he shouldn't have played. He's just like, hey, we didn't coach up enough of a game plan for that, which I thought was interesting. And then he was asked about Colt McCoy, and he was really talked about Colt McCoy in a glowing fashion, and not just because of how he played. And he brought it up unprovoked, like he was asked about the quarterbacks in that Arizona game, and then brought up Colt McCoy. He said Colt McCoy has been a huge impact for their defense. Like him, Patrick Graham, and Colt McCoy would meet after practices, and Colt McCoy, because he was the scout team QB, would tell them, like, hey, this is what I'm seeing. This is where I know what you're doing. I know what you're disguising as. And, like, so that's kind of valuable. And I think Colt McCoy has some coaching aspirations. When he was first signed last season, his first press conference, really you could get the hints that he wants to be a coach eventually. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I know a lot of people trash Colt McCoy. I thought he's a competent backup. Not the best backup in the league, but I'd rather have Colt McCoy than a 6th-round draft pick this season. Like I just would. So I don't know if they bring him back this next year or what, or Colt McCoy goes into coaching. I don't know who's going to be knocking on his door, but that was pretty cool that Colt McCoy is like that involved in game plan, and if he's doing that, I'm sure he has some impact on Daniel Jones in the film room. I know we make jokes about this guy's great in the film room, but I do think that matters when you have a young QB like Daniel Jones. Let's see. Something interesting with Daniel Jones, speaking of which, when he first met with Daniel Jones, he told him straight up, I'm evaluating you. Like, I'm evaluating to see if you're the guy, if you're the answer. So I thought that was pretty interesting how candid he was and straightforward with Daniel Jones when they first met, I guess. If we're going off Joe Judge's word, that he didn't just, praise him and like, oh, no, you're the guy. We believe in you. I took this job because you just like told him, like, no, part of my job is evaluating you and if you're the answer. And then spoke glowingly of the growth he had. So, I think we can all assume Daniel Jones will be the QB in 2021. That doesn't mean Joe Judge is head over heels for him, but it seemed like the last month of the season, Joe Judge made a point of like, hey, I believe in Daniel Jones. I want to make that clear. So it's a lot of coach talk, but I do think there is some meaning to that. And, if you're a film guy like myself, you did see development, in the second half of the season. I mean, Baltimore threw some crazy things at him, and he was processing it pretty well. Only the one interception in the second half of the season, which was a tip pass off of Evan Ingram's hand. So there's that. Gio was really trying to get a quote out of him talking about Doug Peterson. Like, he was really trying to do that, but Joe Judge won it because, obviously Joe Judge went on the rant about how we will never do that. But I think his point was Joe Judge was setting a standard. Like, don't ever come to me, ownership, and ask me the tank. Don't, because I'm not going to do it. And I think Doug Peterson didn't want a tank, and ownership asked him to. And if Doug Peterson had set a standard of, like, ownership, you're not making my decisions, that would have never happened. And, I ranted about Doug Peterson on Somewhere on Radio this morning. But, the Eagles kind of screwed him, but he also let them screw him by letting everyone else have so much say on what Doug Peterson was doing day to day. And that's what you like about Joe Judge, is he's not just kind of going with the wind. Like, he knows, I'm doing this because of something that could happen for 2 years. Like the not naming players last offseason. People got mad about it, and especially people in the media. And they're like, why won't he say Saquon's name or Daniel Jones' name? It's like, it wasn't because of Saquon and Daniel Jones. It was because of guys like Alec Ogletree. Because what happens if they ask him about Daniel Jones and they're like, oh, yeah, he could be the franchise QB. Saquon, oh, he's one of the best talents in the NFL. Well, Coach Judge, what are you going to do with Alec Ogletree's contract? And then what happens? Well, he has to say something good. Alec's a good player, and then they cut him a month later, and then they're like, oh, he said this, he lied. So with Joe Judge, Gettleman said it. He starts at A and gets to Z. Like, there's always reason behind what Joe Judge is doing. He's just not going off of emotion. But Gio was really trying to get a quote out of him, like asking about, what do you think about the Steelers did in Week 17? But he didn't budge because he's Coach Judge. And then at the end, he said he's not a golfer, which I like, because I think, now this is going to come off as really offensive, but I'm just not a big fan of golf people. Like, I've been golfing a few times. Golf people kind of stink. Like, I think they're kind of annoying. They're stuck up. And they're too high class for me. I ain't white trash, but I ain't first class. I'm wild and a little crazy, too. Some girls don't like boys like me. Oh, but some girls do. All right, that's, you probably subscribe to this video at the start, and then after that, you unsubscribe. So, appreciate watching. We just had a podcast out, so I wanted to give my thoughts on this and didn't want to do it on just a few tweets. So, appreciate you. If you do like the video, if you like some boys like me, subscribe, like, appreciate you guys. Let's go Big Blue.